Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever faced a near-death experience where you were in a coma and your very life hung in the balance? What would give you hope and the will to continue? Would you need some type of supernatural help or a medical miracle? Or would it just be the sheer power of your love? My name's Frank Zaccari, and this is Life Altering Events Near-Death Experience. Today we're going to talk about the power of love. We've all heard the songs, we've read books, we've watched movies, all about the power of love. We've heard songs, love can move mountains, love can make you happy, and the Beatles, all you need is love. Does love have that kind of an impact on our life? We're going to discuss that today. My guest today, all the way from Finland, is Maria Lehtman, who faced that near-death experience that should have killed her. Let me tell you something about Maria before we bring her in. She has more than 20 years experience in the telecommunication and travel industry. She specializes in digital photography and writing about digital and self-transformation. She is also a contributing author of the best-selling book, Crappy to Happy. What a great name. Maria, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, Frank, and thanks for having me on the show. It's really exciting.
It's my pleasure. I was a contributing author to Crappy to Happy, and when they sent me the book, I read your story. Here's the one. I opened the book, and there it was. And it is so impressive. So rather than me trying to explain it, Maria, tell us what happened in 2017. What happened?
Well, 2017 was an extremely transformational year. It was about March, April timeframe when my husband, who's like very tall, very sporty guy, I don't even know how many sports he's done. He's out there snowboarding right now. And he fell and broke his hip, like really badly. So his thigh was injured, and they actually had to put a titanium plate there to hold it together. And I was really shocked. I mean, I was shocked to my core because he's my rock, my foundation, and to see him, struggling just with the basic things, like walking.
Right.
So I thought this was probably the worst that could happen, right? But he persevered, and he exercised, and he thought about changing his profession, going to study something else. And we were in that process, and I think it was about September timeframe when suddenly, he started getting a cold, like a normal cold. Mm-hmm. And he was in that process for a couple of weeks. And then it was one Monday, mid-September, when I woke up and I was feeling like, ooh, I'm feeling like sore in my throat. The next day, I thought that, okay, I'm not feeling better. This is actually a little bit worse. And I asked him to take me to a doctor. I'm an occupational health care doctor. And he was kind of, I've always wanted to go back to him and ask him, why did he do that? But he did nothing. He absolutely did nothing. I had chronic illnesses that he could read. He could see my background and everything. And he was just like, didn't take tests and didn't give me antibiotics, even just in case. He just said, I'll give you 3 days off work, just leave, and sent me home. And after that, things escalated to the degree that I don't actually even remember. The way I remember is because people told me what happened, and my husband told me what happened. But apparently I was home 3 days, and on a Friday, I called my husband at work and I said, I'm coughing up blood. I'm really not feeling good. Wow. I don't remember. I just remember being very, very tired. I don't know what I did. I must have eaten. I don't know. But, it was terrible. And he said, well, can you hang in there for a couple of hours and my shift ends and I'll take you to a doctor. But after he hung up, he thought like, I don't know. Her voice was so raspy and I don't think she could breathe well. I think I'm going to actually call the ambulance. And that probably, I think it saved my life because he just called the ambulance at our house and called my sister's husband and said, I can't be there yet, but can you please go and meet her and just make sure she gets home safely and gets some treatment. And apparently I had put all my clothing, you know, my outdoors clothing, I had my hospital bag, you know, packed up. I was standing on the porch and I even went into the ambulance. I climbed in myself. And that's something they even wrote in the epic crisis because they were surprised, you know, the paramedics. And what apparently had happened is that I had a severe blood poisoning and my oxygen intake was about 30%.
Wow.
I shouldn't have been up.
That's correct.
You know, I shouldn't have even been alive. You know, at 40%, you're already on the critical stages, and 98% is kind of the normal day-to-day that we need, you know, to survive. And so, yeah, so they took me and to the hospital and to the ICU. And before, you know, even my husband got in there, I was already under everything, under medicated coma. I was put under all these masks, these tubes. I was covered with, you know, electronic equipment and all these, you know, blood infusions and whatnot coming through everywhere. And I must have been a sight because he never cries and he was in tears. And the doctors couldn't actually tell him whether I was going to make it or not. They said yeah, that was, you know, he didn't know what to make of it. Suddenly, one moment I was there, and the next moment I'm in a state where they said, well, the blood, you know, the poisoning is so bad that it's really in my blood stream. So if it reaches my heart, then that's it, you know. So they said, all we can do is try the different antibiotics and penicillin and see what cocktail actually does the trick. And so the first 3 days, they tried and they said, we're not succeeding. We've gotten about halfway through, but we're still not making it. And they tried another other medicational, you know, combination, and it finally started working then. But it took a week and a half before I was actually then at a state where they could start waking me up.
Right. So in this week and a half, you were in a coma. You were unaware of everything that was going on, correct?
Yeah, I was like aware of what was happening, but it didn't make sense to me. You know, I had no sense of time.
Right.
So I knew I was in a hospital, I was being treated, and I knew things were not good at all. But you know, I also knew I was not in my normal state where I could just wake up and, you know, do things like normal. But it's a weird world.
Yeah, I imagine. And your husband, I can only imagine that, walking in and it's like, oh my wife might die, and she was fine. And no, it's a scary story. Now, you wrote, Maria, that while you were in this coma, you had this near-death experience. Share that with us. What happened?
Yeah, that's I sort of call it a twilight zone. It really was that to me, because I've been dream journaling for a lot of years, ever since I was a child, and I'm a very avid dreamer. So I see lucid dreams. I'm able to, you know, look at myself outside my body, and I'm able to have all these experiences. But if there's one thing I can always do when I dream, it's to come back. So I've learned the control of a lucid dreaming, that I can decide, I have safety words, I can basically do something, or I can wake myself up in a number of ways, or just gradually decide that I want to float back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I was locked. I was locked into this state where I knew I had to go back. I had to get back into my body. I knew I wasn't quite there, and I knew I wasn't home. And I was just going repeatedly through different battles and missions.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a large team of entities, of beings, who were trying to get as much information out of me as they could. And ultimately their goal was to take my life. And so that's the world I was in.
Wow.
And I went through missions throughout 3,000 years. So I could land in the, like in the Egyptian times, or,
Mm-hmm.
in the 1,000 before, the start of this century, or, any time even in the future. One thing that was in common with all of it was that there was my husband. He would always be there at some point, and he would ask me, am I okay? Am I in pain? Do I need anything? I love you, and you have to come back. So it's okay, just come back. And every mission I went through, I just fought that urge to let go, and I just kept coming back home. So I returned in that world I was in. I would return to the current state and to the current year.
Mm-hmm.
I would even return to sort of my home, but it was like Matrix. It was made out of pixels. So anything could come and go, and people could come and go, and they would sort of just absorb into that scenery and leave. So I was never alone, and I knew I wasn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to kind of safe keep things, and I would meditate a lot, even in that state, because I wanted to make sure that people stayed safe and that no harm happened to anybody. So I was so acutely aware that there was danger around,
Mm-hmm.
that death was really next door.
There. Now, in the chapter you wrote in the book, you talked about being in a body of water. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Yeah, are you talking about the one where I held the sticks,
Yes.
sort of the glow sticks in my
Mm-hmm.
hand? Yeah, that's one of the elements of what I've studied throughout my life, and what actually be a real life death test to me is, how do you actually survive? So how do you obtain that ability to live and hang on even though you're at the grips of death? So I was standing by the river, and the river was all black and muddy, like it was in my blood system and in my internal systems. Because I was sick, and I realized I was sick, and I looked at this black water, this stream, and I thought, okay, this is not good. I'm gonna have to do something. And I imagined these two sticks in my hand, so kind of ones with the crystal lights in them. And I thought, okay, now what I'm gonna do is throw this in the water, and it's gonna clear up. And I was perfectly confident that would happen. I threw them in the water, and immediately it started becoming translucent. I could see stones, I could see fish, and it just, spread on and on and on, and until the whole water and the body of water and the river was completely clear. And I knew that I could keep on doing that, and something would change. So ultimately it was in my mind and in my control to an extent that I could do that. I could recover. I could come back from the world I was locked in.
That's amazing. Your prognosis, I was a medic in the military years and years ago, and sometimes someone would come in, not necessarily what you had, but with something that looked like terminal, and they would write DIL, death is likely. yet you kept fighting. You had a DIL prognosis and you kept fighting. What was keeping you alive?
I can only say that, love to me is so important. It's the foundation of why we live. It's the reason why we live. We live here to learn to love each other despite whatever sort of the circumstances are. It's so fundamental. It's the reason why we live in the first place, that I felt that, I hung on to that love, and I felt that it wasn't my time. It wasn't my time to go. If somebody had asked me before this happened, would you believe you're going to be in this situation? I would have said, okay, fine, but I'll come out of it. It's not my time, because it's not time for my loved ones to let me go. They were not ready, and I knew that. And I kept on fighting because I knew my husband needed to see me. He needed me to come back. And my family, my sisters, my mother was still alive at the time. She unfortunately passed away a year ago, but I knew I could not go before my mother. It just wasn't meant to be, And so I hung on to that, and I thought, this cannot happen, simply,
I'm not going to
I cannot
allow
cause this. Yeah, I can't cause this to my family. I need to protect them from this. So I need to come back. So love ultimately brought me back.
That is amazing. As I said, I was a medic in the military during the Vietnam era, and I saw people who had been pronounced dead on arrival, and I'd been in surgery where someone died on the table.
Oh my gosh.
Yet they survived. Yet they
Right.
didn't die. And I was young, I was 20 years old, and I remember looking at these doctors and saying, what happened? And the doctor said, Frank, there's some things we just can't explain. Sometimes there's medical miracles. Now, do you feel you were a medical miracle, or do you think it was something else?
I definitely feel, well, there's two ways about it. I think in one way I was a medical miracle, as you say, because, there was a clinical situation where basically it was against all odds that I survived. I should have been injured in some way. My kidneys, my liver, something would have given up, right? Mm-hmm. And I was already in a kind of, I was below my average weight when I went in. I had a lot of chronic illnesses before this happened. So they were already worried about me as I went in. But I also know that if it's not our time to go, it's not our time to go, Mm-hmm. So somewhere I had written a contract that I had this experience, and I had to experience and go through it, and I had to do it alone. Like in many cases, when you speak with people who have been in similar situations, they've had a guide, or they've had, somebody they call an angel or a teacher. But for some reason, I had chosen to combat it alone, but I was given the gift of love to guide me, to keep that hope up against all the despair that I felt. And that, I feel, cannot be done by any doctor in this world. Mm-hmm. It can only be given from above.
So the love was the spirit guide for you.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, Maria, when in your story you wrote, you go through all this, and then you go home, and you said you were full of anger. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's, I guess it's natural, but I kind of felt like I had been fighting these chronic conditions for so long. And then I wake up, and when I first looked at, I was able to stand up. It took me a while to even be able to stand up or walk. I was so frail, and I had lost more weight, and I looked like a little stick figurine. Seriously, when I saw myself for the first time in the mirror, I thought like, This is what other people are seeing, you know. And so it just made me so furious that I had fought so hard, and then this fallback came, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem fair.
Right.
You know, I just, and the funny thing about the anger was that I was also completely fearless. I feared nothing. You know, I could have stood out there and a meteorite, you know, a meteor would have come
Meteor
down
shower.
and I would have just been like, yeah, let it come.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't get me last time. See what happens now. And for about 6 months, that's how I felt. I was both angry and completely fearless.
Wow, that's incredible. Now,
Yeah.
the anger eventually subsided, as you put in your story, and then you wrote that you had more questions about life and death than you had answers. Okay, elaborate on that a little bit. What were some of those questions?
Yeah, for a long time, I couldn't understand why this has happened to me. Eventually, because I have an ability to be in contact with the other side.
Yeah.
It's easier for me when I'm dreaming, but it's also possible for me to do when I'm awake. So I can discuss. It takes time, and when you're talking about complex concepts, it's even harder. But
Mm-hmm.
I was able to kind of understand that this was one of the missions I had chosen for me. So one of the life experiences, and even beyond that, there was virtue in there that I have wanted to learn. But it kind of, you know, it answered some of my questions, why I survived as well, and why it was taken, you know, the way it was, and why it happened. But if these contracts exist, basically, and we're able to negotiate within them as well, then why don't we have more room to maneuver? Because I still am not over, kind of my immune system never recovered, right? So I'm left in this state where I'm still very vulnerable.
Right.
And so that's always going to be my question. So I went through all that, but you still didn't give me the keys.
Right. You didn't give me the answer.
Yeah, you didn't give me the, you know, I can't just come back and say, now I'm healed. People keep asking me. So, you know, you must be feeling so much better. And it's hard to tell them, well, you know, in some ways, I'm not, you know, I am and I'm not, right?
Right. I'm still here, but it's not all the way there
It's not
yet.
the same. It's not going to be, this is the next normal for me. You know?
Right. You had a line in your story. You said you were having discussions around the pursuit of happiness. Explain that.
Yeah, my favorite sentence.
Mm-hmm.
People keep, you know, that seems to be the line everywhere when you look at social media, the pursuit of
Yes.
happiness. You know, everybody looks for happiness. And I've discarded that. You know, I don't feel that happiness is the thing, at least, and not for me. Because personally, when you go through that turmoil, and like you said, you know, you must have met many who were in combat situations, and those are tough things. And the only way to survive them is to keep a sense of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that's much more important to me, because when you're happy, you're up the scale. And it also means that the scale needs to shift. You're going to be very unhappy, you know. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of going up and, you know, backwards and upwards, I would rather keep a sort of holistic feeling of peace, so that
Mm-hmm.
no matter what happens, I feel content and I'm in harmony
Mm-hmm.
with the world around me and with the people that I'm around.
I love that
Me.
answer. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that answer. There's a sense, well, here in the United States, it's in the Bill of Rights, pursuit of happiness. And everyone believes they have to be happy all the time. It's not going to happen. And I love your peace and harmony. If you can find a steady, common place, it appears it's a better approach than this constant struggle. Oh, I have to be happy and I'm not happy, so now I'm sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
That's how I feel. And I think after everything like what's happened last year, for instance, with the pandemic and the whole world, I was actually able to face that year, even with the losses we had in our family, unconnected, not really connected to the pandemic, but anyway. And by Christmas time, I still felt I had a sense of peace because I had learned to live in the moment. I was there, I was home, my husband was there with me, my family was healthy. And so I had lots of reasons to be content and to feel at peace, instead of going with the rally of, oh, it's,
This is
everybody's
the world's
feeling.
coming to an end.
Yeah, like it's chaos mindedness.
You're right. I love a statement you had in your story. You wrote, without love, you cannot be completely happy. However, we can have love without being completely happy. Now, how do you make the connection there?
Yeah, it's extremely important that people understand that they the two do not necessarily come together. It doesn't mean that when you love somebody, you're always going to be happy, because you're bound to meet some disagreements. You're, coming from different worlds. You want different things. And it's natural that, you might feel maybe uncertain at times, or you might even feel sadness, but that love doesn't have to go. That love is a constant that always stays there. So even when the person we most loved said some horrible things to us, still love them, right? That
Yes.
doesn't disappear.
Right.
It's not like a thing that just, so you can take that in and you can negotiate, you can discuss about it, and you can feel content in love. And I think if I think about a being that looks after the whole world, for example, you may call whatever being that is, I'm not into separating, terminology in any way, but let's call it light. They must feel sad for us as well when something sad happens, but it doesn't mean they stop loving us. They never will. We're the children of the world.
Right.
So that's our thing, and that's what we should feel for others as well, is that we need to go through all these emotions, all these feelings, and we don't always have to be happy, but if we love, that will sustain us from day after day, because there's something to come back to.
What a great answer. So back in the beginning, when we said love will make you happy, all you need is love. Love can move mountains. Apparently it does.
It does for me. I truly believe that.
Wow. Now, Maria, we're just about out of time here. With all you've been through and all your experiences, what last words or thoughts would you like to leave with the viewers around the world?
Well, for certain, I would. I thank anyone for listening. First of all, that's I hope that this gives something for everybody. If there was one thing I would ask people to remember, is that there is light in this world, and there is light within us, and that will never leave us. That will always be stronger than the nightmares that we face. And if you can remember that, and if you can let that light and peace be the forethought and sort of the front thing in your mind, then there are so many other things you can dismiss. And it doesn't mean that you don't get angry or you don't get upset. Those are natural feelings. But it's like my grandmother said, feel those feelings in the right way. So don't push them out. So don't make somebody else take the blame for them, but just deal with the emotions and let the light sustain, and let the light be the one that guides you, because you can feel it in your heart, Basically, if something feels right, it feels right. If it doesn't, it's not right.
Mhm.
So you know what to say next. If you can't breathe well, that's probably not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So you start feeling this choking feeling if you're going to say a bad thing. So rather not say that and just say the good thing, or don't say anything, you
Mhm.
know.
I have
So
read people who've talked about leaning into their emotions. That one statement was, there is no perfection, but
no,
we have the ability to have reflection and then redirection. We have that capability within us. Do you agree with that?
absolutely. Yeah, I do. And I think the process can be very fast. A lot of people think that it has to take time, but not necessarily. You know, if I think the more you do it, the faster it goes
Mm-hmm.
in the moment.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been just an incredible story, Maria, and the viewers are going to just absolutely love this, and the struggles that you had and that you faced, and that how love became in the forefront. So as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Maria one more time. What a great story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate this.
And ladies and gentlemen, no matter what life throws at you, and we just heard a ton of things that life threw at Maria, please do three things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. Pick up the pieces and start moving forward. Better times and better people will come into your life. The first time I said that, people said, yeah, right, Frank. And I said, no, it happens. Better people do come into your life. If you'd like more information about Maria, you can contact me. I will make sure it gets to her. You can read her story in the book, Crappy to Happy. She's one of the contributing authors, and it's a tremendous story to read. Now, you can see this show on Roku TV or on my YouTube page, Frank Zaccari. And if you go to the YouTube page, please subscribe. I will also send links to Maria so she can post it on all the places where she puts out her information. Now, let me leave you with this last thing, ladies and gentlemen. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Maria showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We'll have another life-altering event. Thank you.